1974, during the filming of a chase movie called Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, an actor refused to do a helicopter scene until the studio took out a $1 million life insurance policy on his life. He told the crew he had always had a premonition he was going to die in a helicopter crash. 8 years later, that same actor took a job on a movie set in the California desert. At 2:20 in the morning, a helicopter fell out of the sky and landed on top of him. His premonition was right, but the story of how he got there from a high school dropout driving a taxi in New York to the most intense actor on American television is one that nobody believed could happen. This is the story of Vic Morrow. Number 10, the Bronx kid who dropped out. Victor Harry Morozov was born on February 14, 1929, in the Bronx, New York City. His parents, Harry and Jen, were Russian Jewish immigrants who had anglicized the family name to Morrow. His father was an electrical engineer. The household was stable, middle class, and utterly ordinary, and young Victor couldn't stand it. He wasn't poor, he wasn't running the streets. His problem was something harder to fix. He was restless to his core, allergic to the ordinary life his immigrant parents had carefully built. The family moved to Asbury Park, New Jersey, where Vic spent most of his childhood feeling trapped by everything around him. School bored him. He later admitted that a brief interest in pre-law had more to do with the drama of a great courtroom performance than any actual love of the law. At 17 years old, he made his first big decision. He dropped out of high school and enlisted in the United States Navy, reaching the rank of Seaman First Class. The Navy wasn't his future either. He left quickly, earned his diploma through night school, and enrolled at Florida Southern College in Lakeland, Florida, under the GI Bill. He had no money, no direction, and no clue what he was supposed to become. Nobody in Asbury Park expected to hear his name again. 2 years behind the wheel of a taxi. The turning point came on a small college stage in Central Florida. Morrow was cast in a student production of I Remember Mama at Florida Southern, and something shifted inside him. He abandoned pre-law that semester and threw himself completely into acting. He performed in bilingual productions of Shakespeare and Molière at Mexico City College, a future switchblade-wielding screen tough guy, reciting Hamlet in Spanish. Back in New York, while he enrolled at Paul Mann's Actors Workshop, Mann was a rigorous method-based teacher who imposed one iron condition: absolutely no professional acting work until the 2-year training program was complete. No shortcuts, no exceptions, no auditions. For 24 months, Vic Morrow was forbidden from doing the only thing he wanted to do, so he drove a taxi cab. Every day through the streets of New York, picking up strangers and dropping them off, while his entire future waited on a classroom schedule. He couldn't speed up. An Asbury Park cab driver named Eddie Bodeep later remembered Vic from those years. He said Vic didn't always have the money to pay his fare, but he always eventually did, and if Vic was short, his father would cover it. Vic always told him the same thing. He was going to make it in acting. 2 years of driving, 2 years of studying emotion and truth, 2 years of being absolutely nobody. When he finally graduated from Mann's workshop, his first professional role was Stanley Kowalski in a touring production of A Streetcar Named Desire, the same role that had launched Marlon Brando into legend. A November 1954 notice in the Los Angeles Times took note, but the real break was still one impossible audition away. Number 8, the walk-on, who beat Steve McQueen. In 1955, Vic Morrow walked into MGM Studios with no agent, no appointment, and no lunch money. He was there to audition for director Richard Brooks' new film, Blackboard Jungle, a story about teenage gang members terrorizing a high school teacher played by Glenn Ford. The role Morrow wanted was Artie West, the vicious switchblade-carrying gang leader. He was competing against Steve McQueen and John Cassavetes, 2 actors with connections, representation, and industry buzz. Morrow had calluses from a taxi steering wheel and an intensity that filled the room like smoke. He won the part. The film became a cultural earthquake. It was the first major Hollywood movie to feature rock and roll. Bill Haley and his Comets, performing Rock Around the Clock over the opening credits, helped launch an entire genre into the mainstream. The film was withdrawn from the Venice Film Festival because the American ambassador thought it made the country look bad. In South London, audiences rioted at screenings, ripping up theater seats and dancing in the aisles. Critics singled out Morrow's performance above everything else. The Philadelphia Inquirer wrote that acting honors went to Sidney Poitier and Vic Morrow, whose performances were almost too real for comfort. One viewer said it even more simply: he wanted to murder the Vic Morrow character. MGM signed Morrow to a contract immediately. A taxi driver from the Bronx had just stolen a role from Steve McQueen and become one of the most talked about actors in America. 7. the star who chose poverty over typecasting. What Morrow did next was either the bravest or most foolish decision of his career. MGM had him under contract and wanted to keep the money flowing. There was just one problem. They only offered him switchblade parts. Gang leaders, hoodlums, thugs in leather jackets, terrorizing decent people. The same role with a different title over and over again. Morrow said no. He later explained that to be typed isn't good for an actor like him. He reminded anyone who would listen that he had done Shakespeare, Chekhov, and Tennessee Williams before Blackboard Jungle ever existed. He said the notices were great, but people acted like they'd picked him up out of an ash can and made him a star. He walked away from the MGM contract in 1956. Independent studios came calling with the same roles. He turned them down until he ran out of money. The public couldn't separate the actor from the character. Morrow recalled walking into a Hollywood Boulevard store where the woman behind the counter genuinely thought he was about to rob her until she recognized where she'd seen his face. He once said, "People seem to think he looks menacing, and they assume he is what they see on the screen." Basically, he said that he was a quiet guy. Nobody believed that, and nobody was offering him a chance to prove it. Number 6. Sergeant Saunders Conquers Television. 6 years of smaller film roles followed. Men in War, King Creole, opposite Elvis Presley, God's Little Acre. Solid work, but nothing that broke through. Then, in 1962, his manager Harry Bloom pulled off a masterstroke. ABC was casting a new World War II drama called Combat, and Morrow was being considered for the supporting role of Lieutenant Hanley. Bloom campaigned relentlessly for the lead, Sergeant Chip Saunders, commander of a frontline infantry squad, fighting across France after D-Day. Morrow got the part, and for the next 5 years and 152 episodes, he delivered one of the most sustained performances in the history of American television. Combat premiered on October 2nd, 1962. By its third season, it was the 10th most popular show in the country. It spawned toys, trading cards, board games, and novels. The show became a global phenomenon. In the Philippines, during the 1970s, fans gathered at houses with televisions. And if Morrow's name appeared first in the credits, they stayed, because his episodes had more action. The Vietnamese army commanders reportedly showed reruns to their troops, believing old Vic was tougher than John Wayne himself. One pop culture scholar wrote that Saunders was a figure whose relentlessness hollows him out. At times, you could see the tombstones in his eyes. By 1964, Morrow had assumed control of the scripts and held what Turner Classic Movies called one of the most lucrative contracts in the business. He directed several episodes himself, including the 2-part masterpiece Hills Are for Heroes, written by Gene L. Kuhn. When ABC sent memos complaining the episode ran $300,000 over budget, Morrow used the memos to light his cigarettes. The taxi driver from the Bronx was now running one of the biggest shows on television, 5. The toughest soldier who couldn't kill Clay. Here is the great paradox of Vic Morrow's life. The man who wielded a Thompson submachine gun as television's most iconic soldier absolutely hated guns in real life. His co-star, Rick Jason, wrote that Morrow had a complete dislike of firearms. The Thompson was work in every other respect. He wanted nothing to do with weapons. When Jason invited him to go skeet shooting, Morrow refused. He said he couldn't stand to kill Clay. Between action scenes, he carried a lightweight replica Thompson. The real weapon only came out during actual firefight shots, but his physical commitment to the role was extraordinary. Assistant director Michael Caffey remembered one shoot where Morrow had 104-degree fever. He should have been in the hospital. Instead, he reached into a prop tank for a rescue scene and gave himself a double hernia. They strapped support belts on him and he went right on acting. He earned an Emmy nomination in 1963 for Outstanding Continued Performance by an Actor in a Series. He did not win. A young co-star named Tom Lowell once asked Morrow what it felt like to be a movie star. The answer revealed everything about the man. Morrow said he wasn't a star. He was a comet because a comet burns brighter but goes out faster. Notice when ABC canceled Combat. In the spring of 1967, the comet lost its orbit. 4. The performance in Roots that broke Louis Gossett. After Combat ended, Morrow was trapped in the typecasting he had spent a decade trying to escape. No longer the juvenile delinquent, now the perpetual soldier, or heavy quality roles dried up. But in 1977, he delivered a performance so powerful it generated one of the most famous improvised lines in television history. In Roots, the landmark ABC miniseries watched by 130 million Americans, Morrow played Ames, the vicious slave overseer who whips young Kunta Kinte. His friend, Louis Gossett Jr., who played Fiddler, later described what happened before the whipping scene. Gossett said Morrow came to him and apologized in advance. He said he had to do this to the best of his ability. When the cameras rolled, Morrow was so terrifyingly real that Gossett genuinely hated him. The emotion was so overwhelming that Gossett improvised words that were never in the script. The line that became iconic, "There's going to be another day." Those words came directly from the raw experience of acting opposite Vic Morrow at his most committed. A year earlier, he had played the aggressive opposing coach in the Bad News Bears, opposite Walter Matthau. Between those two performances, Morrow proved he was far more than a tough guy with a machine gun. Hollywood still wasn't listening. Number 3, The Long Fall. The late 1970s and early 1980s were cruel to Vic Morrow. His second marriage to Gail Lester lasted from 1975 to 1979 before collapsing. His mother died, he was drinking heavily, and the parts kept getting worse. Roger Corman's Humanoids from the Deep, a Jaws knockoff called The Last Shark, an Italian exploitation film called 1990, The Bronx Warriors. But the deepest wound was personal. His daughter Jennifer had changed her name years earlier, taking Jason in honor of family friend Jason Robards and dropping Morrow entirely. This crushed Vic. His first marriage to a screenwriter, Barbara Turner, had ended in devastating betrayal when she revealed an affair with Robert Altman, the director who was working on Combat and whom Morrow considered a friend. The divorce split the family. Older daughter Carrie Ann sided with her father, Jennifer sided with her mother. The name change was the blow Morrow never recovered from. He wrote his will in purple felt pen on yellow paper and left Jennifer only $100. His approximately $1 million estate went to Carrie Ann. He named his production company Carlay, combining the names of both daughters. But the company never gained traction, and neither did the reconciliation he desperately wanted. At 53 years old, Vic Morrow was a former television legend, taking any job that would have him. He was looking for one last shot. Number 2, the comeback he couldn't refuse. When director John Landis offered Morrow the lead in a segment of Twilight Zone, the movie, co-produced by Steven Spielberg, it felt like salvation. The role was Bill Connor, a middle-aged racist, magically transported through time to experience persecution firsthand. As a Jewish man in Nazi-occupied France, a black man facing a lynch mob, and a Vietnamese civilian under American bombardment. This was smart, layered, but important material. Morrow personally thanked Landis for the opportunity. He called it a welcome change from the B pictures that had defined his last several years. This was the kind of role that could restart a career. There was just one problem. The Vietnam sequence called for Morrow to carry 2 children through a shallow river, while a helicopter pursued them overhead and massive pyrotechnic explosions erupted all around them. The 2 children, Micah Dinley, age 7, and Renee Shin-Ye-Chen, age 6, were hired illegally. California law prohibited children from working at night, and Landis never sought the required waiver because he knew it would be denied for a scene involving explosives. The children were paid under the table, their parents were told there would be no danger, only noise, and the man who had told film crews for years that he had a premonition about dying in a helicopter crash looked at the setup and said something chilling to a production assistant. He said he must be out of his mind to be doing this. He should have asked for a stunt double. Then he added, "What can they do but kill me, right?" In number 1, 2:20 in the morning. At approximately 2:20 a.m. on July 23, 1982, at Indian Dunes Movie Ranch near Santa Clarita, California, pilot Dorsey Wingo positioned his helicopter roughly 25 feet above the ground. Morrow was in the water below, carrying both children. A special effects mortar detonated directly beneath the tail rotor and destroyed it. The helicopter spun out of control. The production manager radioed the pilot to get out, but Landis was shouting over the radio, "Get lower." When the helicopter fell, Vic Morrow and 7-year-old Micah Dinley were killed by the main rotor blade. 6-year-old Renee Shin-Ye-Chen was crushed by the landing skid. All 3 died instantly. Both children's parents were on set and witnessed everything. The line Morrow was supposed to deliver in that scene, his last scripted line of dialogue, was this: "I'll keep you safe, kids. I promise, nothing will hurt you. I swear to God." The criminal trial lasted 10 months. 5 defendants faced involuntary manslaughter charges. On May 29, 1987, the verdict came back, not guilty on all counts. No one was ever prosecuted for illegally hiring the children, but the tragedy transformed the industry. Warner Brothers created safety committees. The Directors Guild published safety bulletins, and SAG introduced provisions allowing actors to refuse unsafe work. The FAA rewrote helicopter filming regulations. Filming accidents dropped by nearly 70% within 4 years. Steven Spielberg cut ties with Landis entirely, saying, "No movie is worth dying for." Vic Morrow was buried at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, California. His daughter, Carrie Ann, wrote the epitaph, "I loved him as dad." To everyone else, he was Vissy. His daughter, Jennifer Jason Leigh, went on to build one of the most respected acting careers of her generation. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Single White Female, The Hateful Eight. She once said her pull toward acting was partly an attempt to understand her father. She told People magazine she had always hoped they could work together and resolve whatever was between them. Now that chance was lost. And that, she said, was the real tragedy. So let's run through it. A high school dropout from the Bronx, a Navy enlistee with no direction, 2 years driving a taxi through New York while forbidden from auditioning, a walk-on that beat Steve McQueen 152 episodes as television's toughest soldier who couldn't stand to kill Clay. A performance en route so powerful, it created an improvised line seen by 130 million people, a long fall into B-movies and the bottle, and a premonition about a helicopter that came through at 2:20 in the morning. He once told a young co-star he wasn't a star. He was a comet because a comet burns brighter but goes out faster. He was right about that. He was right about the helicopter too. If this story hits you, the next legend we're covering has an origin story you won't believe either. Click the video on your screen right now. You don't want to miss what comes next.